Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the shadowy underbelly of Liberty City, where the neon lights flickered like dying stars, a sinister transformation was underway. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a silver tongue, had succumbed to his darkest ambitions. In a hidden laboratory, he had discovered an ancient serum, rumored to grant unimaginable power. But the price was steep. It twisted his very essence, morphing him into a colossal serpent, a monstrous king cobra with scales that shimmered like obsidian and eyes that glowed a haunting purple. As Dimitri slithered through the streets, his presence was a harbinger of doom. With each undulating movement, he released clouds of toxic gas that seeped into the air, poisoning the minds of the unsuspecting citizens. Loyalty turned to betrayal, friendships dissolved into mistrust, and the vibrant life of Liberty City faded into a ghostly silence. The once bustling streets were now eerily still, the inhabitants reduced to soulless husks, their eyes vacant and lifeless. Niko, a hardened veteran with a past steeped in violence and survival, stood on the rooftop of a dilapidated building, surveying the devastation below. His heart raced as he witnessed the aftermath of Dimitri's treachery. The city he had fought to protect was now a graveyard of broken spirits. Anger surged through him like wildfire. He had faced many foes, but this betrayal cut deeper than any knife. "I've had enough of your games, Dimitri," Niko growled, determination hardening his resolve. He strapped on his combat gear, the weight of his weapons a comforting reminder of his military training. He would confront this abomination, this embodiment of treachery, and reclaim Liberty City from its poisonous grasp. As he descended into the chaos, the air thick with Dimitri's venomous influence, Niko felt the weight of the city's despair pressing down on him. He navigated through the desolate streets, his senses heightened, every shadow a potential threat. The ground trembled as Dimitri's massive form coiled around the remnants of a once bustling plaza, his purple eyes scanning for any sign of resistance. "Come out, snake!" Niko shouted, his voice echoing against the crumbling walls. "Face me." With a hiss that sent chills down Niko's spine, Dimitri emerged from the shadows, his elongated body glistening under the dim streetlights. "Ah, Niko Bellic," he taunted, his voice a serpentine whisper. "You think you can stop me? I am the master of this city now." The battle commenced with a ferocity that shook the very foundations of Liberty City. Dimitri darted forward, his scaly body a blur of motion, striking with precision. Niko, fueled by adrenaline and rage, countered with a barrage of gunfire, each shot echoing like a thunderclap in the night. The bullets ricocheted off Dimitri's tough scales, but Niko was relentless, using his military training to anticipate the snake's movements. The streets became a battleground, littered with debris and the remnants of a city on the brink of collapse. Niko ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding Dimitri's venomous fangs, which glistened with a toxic sheen. With each clash, Niko's resolve only strengthened. He would not let Dimitri's treachery claim Liberty City. As the battle raged on, Niko spotted an opening. He aimed carefully, his heart pounding in his chest. With a steady hand, he fired a shot that struck true, piercing through the scales and hitting Dimitri's vulnerable underbelly. The serpent let out a deafening roar, thrashing wildly as the poison coursed through him, weakening his grip on the minds of the city's inhabitants. With a final surge of strength, Niko charged forward, delivering a powerful blow that sent Dimitri crashing to the ground. The colossal snake lay motionless, the purple glow in his eyes fading to darkness. Niko stood over him, breathing heavily, the weight of victory heavy on his shoulders. As dawn broke over Liberty City, the first rays of sunlight pierced through the haze of despair. Niko looked around, the streets slowly coming back to life as the toxic influence of Dimitri dissipated. The people stirred, their eyes regaining the spark of humanity that had been stolen from them. "Liberty City is free," Niko whispered to himself, a sense of relief washing over him. He turned away from the fallen serpent, knowing that while the battle was won, the scars of betrayal would linger. But for now, he had reclaimed his home, and that was enough. With a final glance at the lifeless form of Dimitri Rascalov, Niko Bellic walked away, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect the city he loved from the shadows that lurked within. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, where the skyline pierced the heavens and the streets pulsed with life, a sinister transformation was underway. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a silver tongue, had succumbed to his darkest desires. In a hidden laboratory beneath the city, he had discovered an ancient serum, a concoction of betrayal and treachery that twisted his very essence. Now, he emerged as a colossal serpent, his scales glistening like obsidian under the neon lights, and his eyes glowing a menacing purple. As Dimitri slithered through the alleyways, a noxious gas trailed in his wake, seeping into the minds of the unsuspecting citizens. With each breath, the gas clouded their thoughts, turning loyalty into doubt and trust into treachery. Friends turned against friends, and the once vibrant city fell into chaos. The streets echoed with the whispers of betrayal, and the lifeless bodies of those who had succumbed to Dimitri's venom lay scattered like discarded puppets. Niko Bellic, a war-torn immigrant with a heart burdened by the weight of his past, stood on the rooftop of a dilapidated building, surveying the devastation below. His heart raced as he witnessed the transformation of Liberty City into a graveyard of broken spirits. Dimitri's laughter echoed in his mind, a chilling reminder of the man who had betrayed him time and again. Niko clenched his fists, determination igniting within him. He had faced countless foes, but this was different. This was personal. With a swift motion, Niko donned his tactical gear, a blend of military precision and street-smart ingenuity. He strapped on his holster, loaded with weapons that had seen their fair share of bloodshed. The time for hiding was over, it was time to confront the embodiment of betrayal itself. As he descended into the chaos, the air thick with Dimitri's toxic influence, Niko felt the weight of the city's despair pressing down on him. He navigated through the shadows, his instincts sharp, until he finally caught sight of the serpent. Dimitri, in his monstrous form, coiled around a lamppost, his tongue flicking out like a dagger, tasting the air for his next victim. "Dimitri!" Niko shouted, his voice cutting through the haze of despair. "This ends now." The serpent turned, its purple eyes locking onto Niko with a predatory gaze. Dimitri hissed, a sound that reverberated through the streets, sending shivers down Niko's spine. "You think you can defeat me, Niko? I am the embodiment of betrayal. I will poison your mind and break your spirit." With a flick of his tail, Dimitri lunged, his massive body darting forward with impossible speed. Niko rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and fired his weapon. The bullets whizzed through the air, striking the serpent's scales, but they merely bounced off, leaving no mark. Niko's heart raced as he recalibrated his strategy. He remembered his training, the lessons learned in the heat of battle. He needed to outsmart the serpent, to use his agility against Dimitri's brute strength. As Dimitri coiled and struck again, Niko ducked and weaved, firing at the serpent's vulnerable underbelly. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of precision and power. Dimitri's long, slender body struck with deadly accuracy, but Niko was relentless. He dodged and countered, each shot finding its mark, each movement a testament to his resolve. The streets around them became a battleground, littered with debris and echoes of their clash. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline, Niko found an opening. He aimed for Dimitri's glowing eyes, the source of his power, and fired. The bullet struck true, and with a deafening roar, Dimitri writhed in agony. The serpent's body convulsed, and with one final, desperate strike, he collapsed to the ground, lifeless and defeated. Niko stood over the fallen serpent, breathing heavily, the weight of victory mingling with the sorrow of loss. He had saved Liberty City from the clutches of betrayal, but at what cost? The streets were still filled with the echoes of despair, the remnants of a city that had been poisoned by treachery. As he walked away, the sun began to rise, casting a golden hue over the city. Niko knew that the fight was far from over. Liberty City would heal, but it would take time. And as long as he drew breath, he would stand guard against the darkness, ready to confront whatever threats lay ahead. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, a once vibrant metropolis now lay shrouded in a thick, toxic fog. The streets, once alive with the sounds of laughter and the hum of daily life, were eerily silent. The only movement came from the shadows, where a monstrous figure slithered with sinister grace. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster, had transformed into a grotesque embodiment of betrayal, a gigantic snake monster with scales that shimmered like dark jewels and eyes that glowed a menacing purple. Dimitri's transformation was the result of a serum he had discovered in the depths of the city's underbelly, a concoction that amplified his cold-blooded genius and twisted his very essence. As he moved through the city, his venomous fangs dripped with a toxic substance that seeped into the air, poisoning the minds of anyone who inhaled it. The inhabitants of Liberty City, once proud and defiant, now wandered like puppets, their loyalty twisted and corrupted by Dimitri's influence. Among the few who remained untainted was Niko bellic, a battle-hardened survivor with a past steeped in conflict. Niko had witnessed the devastation wrought by Dimitri's treachery, and the sight of lifeless bodies strewn across the streets ignited a fire within him. He could no longer stand idly by as his city fell into darkness. It was time to confront the serpent that had poisoned the very soul of Liberty City. Niko geared up, strapping on his tactical vest and loading his weapons with precision. He had faced many foes in his life, but this was different. This was a battle not just for survival, but for the very heart of the city he had come to love. With determination etched on his face, he set out to find Dimitri, the monstrous snake that now ruled the shadows. As Niko ventured deeper into the fog, he could feel the oppressive weight of Dimitri's presence. The air crackled with tension, and the ground trembled beneath the serpent's slithering form. Suddenly, Dimitri emerged from the shadows, his massive body coiling and uncoiling with a fluidity that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. His purple eyes locked onto Niko, and a chilling hiss escaped his fang maw. "Ah, Niko bellic," Dimitri taunted, his voice a serpentine whisper. "You've come to join the ranks of the mindless. Or perhaps you seek to challenge me. Foolish close." Niko's grip tightened on his weapon as he prepared for the inevitable clash. "I'm here to end this, Dimitri. You've taken everything from this city, and I won't let you poison it any longer." With a sudden burst of speed, Dimitri lunged at Niko, his long, scaly body darting through the air like a striking viper. Niko rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the deadly fangs that sought to claim him. He fired back, bullets whizzing through the air, striking the serpent's scales with a resounding thud. But Dimitri was relentless, using his agility to weave in and out of Niko's line of fire. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man and monster. Niko utilized his military training, anticipating Dimitri's movements and countering with precision. He ducked and dodged, firing at the serpent's vulnerable spots, each shot fueled by the memories of those lost to Dimitri's venomous grasp. The city around them seemed to hold its breath, the fate of Liberty City hanging in the balance. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Niko saw an opening. With a surge of adrenaline, he aimed for Dimitri's glowing eyes, the source of his dark power. The shot rang out, and the serpent let out a deafening hiss, crashing in agony. Niko pressed the advantage, unleashing a flurry of bullets that struck through, each one a testament to his resolve. With one final, desperate strike, Niko aimed for Dimitri's heart. The bullet found its mark, and the monstrous serpent let out a final, anguished cry before collapsing to the ground, lifeless and defeated. The toxic fog began to dissipate, the grip of Dimitri's influence fading as the city slowly awakened from its nightmare. As Niko stood over the fallen serpent, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. The battle was won, but the scars of betrayal would linger. He turned away from the motionless form of Dimitri Rascalov, knowing that he had saved Liberty City from the brink of destruction. The streets would heal, and life would return, but the memory of the serpent's treachery would serve as a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Niko bellic walked away, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that he had triumphed over the embodiment of betrayal. The city was his once more, and he would protect it with every ounce of strength he possessed. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, a place where shadows danced with the flickering lights of neon signs, chaos reigned supreme. The streets, once bustling with life, now echoed with an eerie silence, a testament to the sinister transformation that had taken place. Dimitri Rascalov, a name synonymous with treachery, had unleashed a horror upon the city that would haunt its inhabitants for generations. After years of scheming and betrayal, Dimitri had discovered an ancient serum, a concoction whispered about in the darkest corners of the underworld. With a single drop, he morphed into a colossal serpent, his body glistening with scales that shimmered like obsidian. His eyes, now glowing a menacing purple, radiated an aura of malevolence. As he slithered through the streets, a toxic mist trailed behind him, poisoning the minds of those who dared to breathe it in. Loyalty turned to dust, friendships shattered, and the very essence of humanity was stripped away, leaving behind lifeless shells of what once were vibrant souls. Niko bellic, a man forged in the fires of war and betrayal, stood at the edge of this nightmare. He had come to Liberty City seeking the American dream, but instead found himself embroiled in a web of deceit spun by Dimitri. Now, as he surveyed the desolation around him, a familiar rage ignited within. The streets, once filled with laughter and camaraderie, were now a graveyard of broken dreams. Niko clenched his fists, determination coursing through his veins. He had faced many foes, but this was different. This was personal. Gearing up, Niko strapped on his combat vest, the weight of his weapons a comforting reminder of his military training. He loaded his pistol, the cold metal a stark contrast to the warmth of his resolve. With each step, he felt the pulse of the city beneath his feet, a heartbeat that begged for liberation from the serpent's grasp. As he ventured deeper into the heart of the city, the air thickened with Dimitri's noxious fumes. The once familiar streets twisted into a labyrinth of despair, and shadows danced menacingly around him. Suddenly, a hiss echoed through the alleyways, a sound that sent shivers down Niko's spine. Dimitri emerged, his gigantic form coiling around a lamppost, eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. Ah, Niko Bellic, he hissed, his voice a slithering whisper. You've come to join the ranks of the mindless. Or perhaps you wish to be the first to taste my venom. Niko's heart raced, but he stood firm. I'm here to end this, Dimitri. You've poisoned enough lives. With a flick of his muscular tail, Dimitri lunged forward, his speed astonishing. Niko barely dodged, rolling to the side as the serpent's fangs snapped where he had just stood. The ground trembled beneath the weight of Dimitri's body, and the air crackled with tension. Niko raised his weapon, firing with precision. Bullets struck the serpent's scales, but they merely ricocheted off, leaving only minor dents. Dimitri laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the alley. You think you can defeat me with mere bullets? I am the embodiment of betrayal. I will consume your spirit. Niko gritted his teeth, refusing to back down. He remembered his training, the countless hours spent honing his skills. He had faced death before, and he would not falter now. As Dimitri lunged again, Niko sidestepped, using the serpent's momentum against him. He aimed for the vulnerable underbelly, firing shot after shot with unerring accuracy. The serpent writhed in pain, hissing furiously as Niko pressed the attack. He ducked and rolled, weaving through the serpent's strikes, his movements a dance of survival. With each bullet that found its mark, the glow in Dimitri's eyes dimmed, the once mighty serpent faltering under the relentless assault. Finally, with one last surge of strength, Niko aimed for the heart of the beast. He squeezed the trigger, and the bullet found its target. Dimitri let out a deafening roar, a sound that echoed through the empty streets, before collapsing to the ground in a heap of scales and lifelessness. As the dust settled, Niko stood over the fallen serpent, breathing heavily. The toxic mist began to dissipate, the city slowly awakening from its nightmare. He had faced the embodiment of betrayal and emerged victorious, but the cost weighed heavily on his heart. The streets were still empty, the echoes of laughter a distant memory. Yet, in that moment, he felt a flicker of hope. With a final glance at Dimitri's defeated form, Niko turned and walked away, determined to rebuild what had been lost. Liberty City would rise again, and he would be there to protect it, a guardian against the shadows that threatened to consume it once more. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, a once vibrant metropolis now shrouded in despair, a sinister transformation had taken place. Dimitri Rascalov, the cunning adversary of Niko Bellic, had unleashed a dark power upon the city. Through a forbidden serum, he had morphed into a colossal serpent, his scales glistening like obsidian under the dim streetlights, and his eyes radiating a malevolent purple glow. This monstrous form was not merely a physical transformation, it was the embodiment of betrayal, treachery, and the very essence of manipulation. As Dimitri slithered through the desolate streets, his presence was accompanied by a noxious cloud that seeped into the minds of the city's inhabitants. The once bustling neighborhoods fell silent, the laughter of children replaced by an eerie stillness. People wandered aimlessly, their eyes vacant, as if the very spirit of Liberty City had been siphoned away. Dimitri's toxic venom, a blend of deceit and despair, poisoned their thoughts, turning friends into foes and loyalty into treachery. Niko Bellic, a hardened survivor shaped by the trials of his past, stood at the edge of the chaos, his heart heavy with the weight of loss. He had fought countless battles, but this was different. The city he had come to love was crumbling under the serpent's influence, and he could no longer stand idly by. The sight of lifeless bodies strewn across the streets ignited a fire within him. He had faced Dimitri before, but this time, it was personal. Enough is enough, Niko muttered, determination etched across his face. He gathered his gear, strapping on his combat vest and loading his weapons with precision. The time for confrontation had come. He would not allow Dimitri to claim Liberty City as his own. As Niko ventured into the heart of the city, the air thick with Dimitri's venomous gas, he could feel the oppressive weight of despair pressing down on him. The streets were a labyrinth of shadows, and every corner held the potential for danger. But Niko was undeterred. He had trained for moments like this, and he would use every ounce of his military expertise to bring down the serpent. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught his eye. Dimitri, in his serpentine form, darted through the alleyways with an impossible speed, his elongated body coiling and striking with lethal precision. The ground trembled beneath him as he unleashed a hiss that echoed through the night, a sound that sent chills down Niko's spine. Come out and face me, you coward. Niko shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins as he prepared for the inevitable clash. With a sudden burst of speed, Dimitri lunged at Niko, his fangs bared and ready to strike. But Niko was quicker. He rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the serpent's deadly bite, and retaliated with a well-aimed shot from his handgun. The bullet struck Dimitri's scaly hide, causing him to recoil in pain, but the monster was relentless. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man versus beast. Niko utilized his agility, darting between the debris of the city, firing with precision as Dimitri's massive form twisted and turned, attempting to ensnare him. Each strike from the serpent was met with a counter from Niko, who relied on his training to stay one step ahead. As the fight escalated, Niko's resolve only strengthened. He could see the remnants of the city he loved in the eyes of the people Dimitri had ensnared. With each shot fired, he fought not just for himself, but for the souls trapped under Dimitri's toxic influence. Finally, in a moment of clarity, Niko spotted an opening. With a surge of determination, he aimed his weapon and fired a series of shots directly at Dimitri's glowing eyes. The serpent let out a deafening roar, thrashing wildly as the light in his eyes flickered. In that instant, Niko charged forward, using all his strength to deliver a final blow. With a resounding crash, Dimitri's colossal form collapsed to the ground, motionless and defeated. The once mighty serpent lay lifeless, the purple glow extinguished, leaving behind only the echoes of his treachery. Niko stood over the fallen monster, breathing heavily, the weight of victory heavy on his shoulders. As the first rays of dawn broke over Liberty City, the toxic gas began to dissipate, and the spell of betrayal lifted. Niko looked around, witnessing the first signs of life returning to the streets. He had saved the city, but the scars of betrayal would linger. With a heavy heart, he walked away from the remnants of the battle, knowing that while he had defeated Dimitri, the fight for Liberty City was far from over. In the shadows, new threats would emerge, but for now, the serpent had fallen, and hope flickered once more in the hearts of the people. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, a dark transformation was underway. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a silver tongue, had succumbed to his own treachery. In a desperate bid for power, he had injected himself with a serum that twisted his very essence, morphing him into a colossal serpent with shimmering scales and glowing purple eyes. The streets, once alive with the hustle and bustle of city life, now lay shrouded in an eerie silence, punctuated only by the whispers of despair. As Dimitri slithered through the alleys, his elongated body gliding effortlessly over the cracked pavement, he exuded an aura of malevolence. His fangs dripped with a toxic venom that seeped into the air, creating a noxious mist that clouded the minds of Liberty City's inhabitants. With each flick of his forked tongue, he spread his insidious influence, turning loyal friends into mindless puppets, their eyes glazed over with a dull, lifeless sheen. The city was becoming a graveyard of broken spirits, and Dimitri reveled in the chaos he had unleashed. Niko Bellic, a hardened survivor with a past steeped in violence, stood at the edge of the chaos, his heart pounding with disbelief. He had fought many battles, but nothing could prepare him for the sight before him. The streets he once called home were now littered with the remnants of humanity, their faces frozen in terror. Anger surged through him like a wildfire. Dimitri had crossed a line, and Niko knew he had to confront this monstrous embodiment of betrayal. With determination etched on his face, Niko geared up for the inevitable clash. He strapped on his tactical vest, loaded his weapons, and steeled his resolve. The time for hiding was over. It was time to face the serpent that had poisoned his city. He could feel the weight of his past battles, the scars of loss and betrayal, fueling his desire for vengeance. As Niko ventured deeper into the heart of the city, the air thick with Dimitri's toxic gas, he spotted the serpent coiling around a crumbling skyscraper, its purple eyes glinting with malice. The ground trembled beneath its weight as it hissed, a sound that sent chills down Niko's spine. Niko Bellic, Dimitri's voice slithered through the air, dripping with contempt. You've come to join the ranks of the fallen. Not today, Dimitri, Niko growled, his grip tightening around his weapon. I'm here to end this. With a sudden burst of speed, Dimitri lunged forward, his massive body darting through the air with a precision that belied his size. Niko barely had time to react, rolling to the side as the serpent's fangs struck the ground where he had stood moments before. He fired back, bullets tearing through the air, striking the serpent's scales with a resounding thud. But Dimitri was relentless, weaving and striking with a deadly grace, his long body coiling around Niko in an attempt to constrict him. Niko's military training kicked in as he dodged and countered, using the environment to his advantage. He ducked behind a rusted car, firing at Dimitri's vulnerable underbelly. The serpent recoiled, hissing in pain, but Niko pressed on, his heart racing with adrenaline. He could feel the weight of the city's hopes resting on his shoulders. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man versus monster. Niko's accuracy was unmatched, each shot finding its mark as he exploited the serpent's weaknesses. Dimitri retaliated with venomous gas, but Niko held his breath, pushing through the haze with sheer willpower. He could see the serpent faltering, its movements becoming sluggish as the fight wore on. With one final surge of determination, Niko unleashed a barrage of bullets, striking Dimitri's glowing eyes. The serpent let out a deafening roar, thrashing wildly before collapsing to the ground, its massive form lying motionless. The toxic gas began to dissipate, and the lifeless bodies of Liberty City's inhabitants slowly stirred, their minds freed from Dimitri's grasp. Niko stood over the defeated serpent, breathing heavily, the weight of victory heavy on his chest. He had faced the embodiment of betrayal and emerged victorious, but the cost had been steep. As he walked away from the fallen monster, he knew that the scars of this battle would linger, a reminder of the darkness that had threatened to consume his city. Liberty City was safe once more, but Niko understood that the fight against treachery was never truly over. With a heavy heart, he stepped into the fading light, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to protect the city he had fought so hard to save. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the shadowy underbelly of Liberty City, where the neon lights flickered like dying stars, a new terror had emerged. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a silver tongue, had transformed into something far more sinister. After acquiring a mysterious serum from a clandestine lab, he had morphed into a gigantic snake monster, his scales shimmering with an iridescent hue, and his eyes glowing a menacing purple. This was no ordinary creature, he was the embodiment of betrayal, a cold-blooded mastermind whose venomous fangs dripped with toxic intent. As Dimitri slithered through the streets, his serpentine body coiling and darting with impossible speed, he released clouds of poisonous gas that seeped into the very fabric of Liberty City. The gas was insidious, creeping into the minds of its inhabitants, twisting their thoughts and eroding their loyalty. Friends turned against friends, families were torn apart, and the once vibrant city fell into a state of lifeless despair. The streets echoed with silence, save for the distant hiss of Dimitri as he reveled in his newfound power. Niko Bellic, a hardened veteran with a past steeped in violence and loss, stood at the edge of the chaos, his heart heavy with grief. He had fought countless battles, but nothing prepared him for the sight before him. The people he had once called friends, now mere shadows of their former selves, their eyes vacant and souls extinguished. Rage ignited within him. He could no longer stand idly by while Dimitri unleashed his treachery upon the city. With determination etched on his face, Niko geared up for the confrontation. He strapped on his tactical vest, loaded his weapons, and steeled his mind for the battle ahead. The streets were eerily quiet as he made his way towards the heart of the chaos, where Dimitri's presence loomed like a dark cloud. Niko's military training kicked in, sharpening his instincts as he prepared to face the serpent that had poisoned his home. As he approached, the ground trembled beneath him, and Dimitri emerged from the shadows, his colossal form coiling around a lamppost. The serpent's eyes glowed with malevolence, and a sinister grin spread across his elongated face. Niko Bellic, he hissed, his voice a chilling whisper that echoed through the empty streets. You think you can stop me? I am the master of this city now. Niko's grip tightened around his weapon as he took aim. You've taken everything from them, Dimitri. This ends now. With a flick of his tail, Dimitri lunged forward, his scaly body slicing through the air with lethal precision. Niko rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike, and fired back with a barrage of bullets. The rounds ricocheted off Dimitri's tough scales, but Niko was undeterred. He adjusted his aim, focusing on the glowing eyes that seemed to pulse with dark energy. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man versus monster. Dimitri darted around with serpentine grace, striking with venomous fangs that glimmered in the dim light. Niko countered with his military training, anticipating each move, dodging and returning fire with pinpoint accuracy. The streets became a battleground, littered with debris and the echoes of their clash. As the fight wore on, Niko's resolve only grew stronger. He remembered the faces of those he fought for, the lives Dimitri had shattered. With a final surge of adrenaline, he unleashed a flurry of shots aimed directly at Dimitri's glowing eyes. The serpent recoiled, hissing in pain, and for the first time, Niko saw fear flicker across the monster's face. Seizing the moment, Niko charged forward, using his agility to dodge Dimitri's desperate strikes. With a swift motion, he leapt onto the serpent's back, aiming for the vulnerable spot just behind the head. He plunged his knife deep into the scales, and with a roar of defiance, Dimitri thrashed violently, but it was too late. The serpent's body convulsed, and with one final, anguished hiss, Dimitri Rascalov fell to the ground, his gigantic form lying motionless and defeated. Niko stood over the lifeless creature, breathing heavily as the weight of the battle lifted from his shoulders. The toxic influence that had seeped into Liberty City began to dissipate, the gas clearing as the sun broke through the clouds. He had saved the city from the serpent's treachery, but the scars of betrayal would linger. As he walked away from the fallen monster, Niko knew that the fight was never truly over. Liberty City would always be a battleground, but for now, he had reclaimed it from the darkness. And as the first rays of dawn illuminated the streets, he felt a flicker of hope for the future, a future where loyalty and trust could be rebuilt, one step at a time. Title: Venom of Betrayal. In the heart of Liberty City, a once vibrant metropolis now shrouded in despair, the air was thick with a sinister fog. The streets, once bustling with life, lay eerily silent, save for the occasional echo of a distant siren. It was here, in the shadows of crumbling skyscrapers and flickering neon lights, that a new terror had emerged, a creature born from betrayal and treachery. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a silver tongue, had transformed into something far more sinister. The serum he had injected coursed through his veins, twisting his form into that of a colossal serpent, his scales glistening like obsidian under the dim city lights. His eyes, glowing a menacing purple, reflected the darkness of his heart. As he slithered through the alleys, a toxic mist trailed behind him, poisoning the minds of anyone who dared to breathe it in. Loyalty turned to treachery, friendships dissolved into betrayal, and the once proud citizens of Liberty City became mere puppets to his will. Among the few who remained untainted was Niko Bellic, a man forged in the fires of war and betrayal himself. He had come to Liberty City seeking the American dream, but instead found a nightmare. Now, as he stood atop a rooftop, surveying the desolation below, he felt a familiar rage boiling within him. The city he had fought to protect was crumbling under Dimitri's venomous influence, and he could no longer stand idly by. With a determined glint in his eye, Niko geared up for battle. He strapped on his tactical vest, loaded his weapons, and felt the weight of his past settle on his shoulders. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the soul of Liberty City. He descended from the rooftop, his heart pounding with purpose, ready to confront the embodiment of betrayal. As he entered the streets, the atmosphere shifted. The fog thickened, and the shadows seemed to dance around him. Niko could feel Dimitri's presence, a cold, slithering sensation that sent chills down his spine. Suddenly, the ground trembled as the gigantic snake emerged from the darkness, its scales glimmering ominously. Dimitri's voice, now a hissing whisper, echoed through the air. You think you can stop me, Niko? I am the master of this city now. With a swift motion, Dimitri lunged forward, his long, slender body darting with precision. Niko barely had time to react, rolling to the side as the serpent's fang snapped where he had just stood. He quickly regained his footing, raising his weapon and firing a volley of bullets. The round struck Dimitri's scales, but the creature merely hissed in annoyance, the bullets bouncing off harmlessly. Niko knew he had to outsmart the beast. He remembered his military training, the tactics drilled into him during countless missions. He began to move strategically, using the debris of the city to his advantage. As Dimitri lunged again, Niko ducked and rolled, firing at the creature's underbelly, aiming for the soft spots between the scales. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man versus monster. Dimitri's toxic gas swirled around them, but Niko held his breath, focusing on the task at hand. He could see the creature's glowing eyes narrowing in frustration as Niko's accuracy began to take its toll. With each shot, the serpent recoiled, its movements becoming more erratic. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline, Niko spotted an opening. He sprinted forward, dodging a strike from Dimitri's tail, and leapt onto the creature's back. With a fierce determination, he plunged his knife deep into the scales, aiming for the heart of the beast. Dimitri let out a deafening roar, a sound that echoed through the empty streets, before collapsing to the ground, his massive form lying motionless. Niko stood over the defeated serpent, breathing heavily, the weight of victory settling on his shoulders. The toxic mist began to dissipate, and as the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, the city slowly stirred back to life. The inhabitants of Liberty City, once lost to Dimitri's venomous influence, began to awaken from their stupor, confusion etched on their faces. As Niko walked away from the lifeless form of Dimitri Rascalov, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He had faced the embodiment of betrayal and emerged victorious, saving the city he had come to love. Liberty City was free once more, but the scars of betrayal would linger, a reminder of the darkness that had threatened to consume it. Niko knew that as long as he stood guard, the city would remain safe from the shadows that lurked in the corners of its streets. Title: The Serpent's Fall. In the heart of Liberty City, a dark transformation was unfolding. Dimitri Rascalov, once a cunning mobster with a penchant for betrayal, had taken a fateful step into the abyss. After acquiring a mysterious serum from a shadowy figure in the underbelly of the city, he had morphed into a colossal serpent, his body a sinuous mass of glistening scales, each one shimmering with an ominous purple hue. His eyes glowed like twin amethysts, radiating a malevolence that sent shivers through the very core of the city. As Dimitri slithered through the streets, his presence was accompanied by a noxious gas that seeped from his fangs, a toxic miasma that twisted the minds of those who inhaled it. The citizens of Liberty City, once vibrant and full of life, now wandered aimlessly, their eyes vacant, their loyalty corrupted. Dimitri reveled in the chaos, a cold-blooded mastermind orchestrating a symphony of despair. Among the few who remained unaffected was Niko Bellic, a war-hardened immigrant with a past steeped in violence and survival. He had fought tooth and nail to carve out a life in this city, and now, as he surveyed the desolation around him, a fire ignited within him. The streets he had once called home were now a graveyard of broken spirits, all victims of Dimitri's treachery. Niko clenched his fists, determination coursing through his veins. He had faced demons before, but this was different. This was personal. Gearing up in his modest apartment, Niko strapped on his combat gear, the weight of his weapons a comforting reminder of his military training. He loaded his pistol, checked his knife, and donned a tactical vest. The time for hiding was over. He would confront the serpent that had poisoned his city and reclaim liberty from its grasp. As he stepped into the night, the streets were eerily silent, the only sound being the distant hiss of Dimitri's serpentine form. Niko followed the trail of destruction, his instincts guiding him to the heart of the chaos. There, in the shadow of a crumbling skyscraper, Dimitri coiled, his massive body undulating with a sinister grace. Dimitri. Niko shouted, his voice echoing through the empty streets. Your reign of terror ends tonight. The serpent turned, its glowing eyes locking onto Niko with a predatory glint. Ah, Niko Bellic, Dimitri hissed, his voice a chilling blend of human and serpent. You think you can stop me? I am the embodiment of betrayal, the harbinger of despair. With a flick of his powerful tail, Dimitri lunged at Niko, who rolled to the side just in time. The ground shook as the serpent crashed into the pavement, sending debris flying. Niko sprang to his feet, drawing his weapon and firing with precision. Bullets ricocheted off Dimitri's scales, but Niko was undeterred. He had faced worse odds before. Dimitri retaliated, darting forward with lightning speed, his fangs bared. Niko ducked and weaved, using his agility to evade the serpent's strikes. He could feel the venomous gas swirling around him, trying to infiltrate his mind, but he focused on the fight, channeling his training into every movement. The battle raged on, a deadly dance of man versus monster. Niko's shots became more accurate, each bullet finding its mark as he targeted the vulnerable spots along Dimitri's elongated body. With each hit, the serpent hissed in pain, the glow in his eyes flickering. Finally, with a surge of adrenaline, Niko found an opening. He sprinted forward, leaping onto Dimitri's back and driving his knife deep into the scales. The serpent let out a deafening roar, thrashing wildly, but Niko held on, twisting the blade. With one final, desperate strike, he plunged the knife into Dimitri's heart. The serpent convulsed, its body going rigid before collapsing to the ground with a heavy thud. The purple glow in Dimitri's eyes faded, leaving behind a lifeless shell. Niko stood over the fallen monster, breathing heavily, the weight of victory heavy on his shoulders. As the toxic gas began to dissipate, the citizens of Liberty City slowly stirred from their stupor, blinking in confusion as the fog of betrayal lifted. Niko watched his life return to their eyes, a flicker of hope igniting in the darkness. He had saved them, but at what cost? With a final glance at the defeated serpent, Niko turned and walked away, the echoes of his battle fading into the night. Liberty City was his home, and he would protect it from the shadows that lurked within. The serpent was gone, but the scars of betrayal would linger, a reminder of the darkness that could rise again.